guys, welcome back. And this week we're gonna... hey Mickey, you're looking... yeah. What are you up to?
Disney game.
What? You want to check out some Disney games? Yeah, we can do that. I like Disney games. I even did a whole video on them earlier this year that no one watched. But maybe we'll have better luck this time. So let's just get this rolling with one that I completely missed out on back when I was a kid, even though I was a massive fan of the movie.
Yeah, Disney.
I don't know if you guys were lucky enough to see Toy Story in theaters back in the day, but man, that was an awesome experience. Seeing CGI done this well for an animated movie was crazy back then. Up to that point, CGI cartoons always kind of looked more like Reboot. And yeah, that is an awesome show, but there was always this kind of stiff look to it. It always just looked like it had that early 90s CGI look to it, is what I'm trying to say. But Toy Story was just on a different level. While it was obviously still made with a computer, it was leagues past anything we had seen quality-wise up to that point, at least for a fully animated movie. I was blown away by the whole thing, but for whatever reason, I just kind of figured that the games released for it would strictly be for little kids.
Don't even think about it, cowboy.
And by the time this hit the Super Nintendo in 1995, I was thoroughly in that teen phase where I wouldn't be caught dead with this in my Super Nintendo, even if I was a fan of the movie. I was over here busy playing cool stuff like Street Fighter and I guess the 3DO. I don't know what I was doing back then. But the point is that I wasn't playing this. It does promise an intense 3D experience, so I guess it's got that going for it. But you know, if I'd have just looked at the back of the box, well, I wouldn't have seen much to change my mind. Since for whatever reason, they only saw fit to toss in 2 whole screenshots to represent this intense 3D experience. But I think we just need to jump in and see if Woody and the gang can make a game that's half as entertaining as the movie was. So, Toy Story here is actually a Traveler's Tales game, and believe it or not, these guys are still around to this day making all those damn Lego games that the kids seem to like. But before they hit gold with Lego games, they were usually making games for Disney, and Toy Story here was either their first or their second game that they did for them, but either way, it's a really interesting game. Instead of your typical side-scrolling hop-and-bop platformer, Toy Story basically tried to make every stage completely different from the last. The most common you'll see is where you have an objective to do, like freeing army men from their bucket so that they can carry the baby monitor, or just getting toys hidden away before Andy comes back. And these are all pretty fun, they're not bad at all. But then the game hits you with stuff like a race against Buzz where you're swinging across gaps with your whip, or even racing around Andy's room as the RC car where you'll have to refill your power with batteries that Buzz drops. It's actually kind of crazy just how different every one of these stages are. They really went crazy with the variety here, and it definitely keeps you on your toes since one minute you're tossing toys in a trunk and then you're fighting a giant Buzz Lightyear the next. But it's got its problems too. The controls aren't really that bad, but the hit detection is just all over the place. Sometimes Woody will take a hit and nothing is even touching him. Other times stuff will literally be going through him and he's not taking a hit. Also, some of these levels fall into the memorize crap coming at you constantly trap. But once you get the patterns down, it's really not that bad. But it still pops up more than I'd like at least. Like I said, it can be very dependent on what you're doing in any given level to if the game's going to be fun or maddening. At least those intense 3D graphics doesn't disappoint, with just about everything in the game rendered with CGI, along with some neat little tricks here and there to make it feel like the levels have depth to them. I guess the only downside is that everything's so well animated that it can make the stuff that you're controlling feel kinda sluggish. But overall, this is an amazing looking Super Nintendo game. And if you were a kid wanting that Toy Story experience at home, I don't think you could have done much better than this with the console tech that we had at the time. This is a great representation of the movie, and for the most part, it's fun to play. Some of the levels hit better than others, but yeah, I would have still had a lot of fun with this if I could have just dragged myself away from whatever dumb games I was playing at the time.
Infinity and beyond!
But what did you guys think about this one? Let me know if I'm just overly impressed by this or not, because to me, this is one of the better Disney games on the Super Nintendo, and I could totally recommend this to anyone wanting a solid Toy Story experience. It's got a certain simple charm to it, and that was honestly one of the best things about the movie as well. So good job, Traveler's Tales. This is one that can actually get the stamp of approval from me. But you know what game doesn't get the stamp of approval? Beauty and the Beast. And I'm not even gonna get into this one much because there ain't that much of a game to cover. You play as the Beast in this one, chasing Belle across the castle. But this is one of those super short games where the main challenge is managing just to not get hit every few steps, since it seems like every single enemy in the game is positioned for maximum cheap hits. Beast's main attack is a mostly useless swipe that's incredibly hard to hit anything with due to it being too slow and enemies being too fast. I guess what you're supposed to do is use his roar to stun enemies for long enough for you to hit them, but the roar is so slow to build up that enemies will have already hit you and then moved on to their next victim before you even get to use it. You can also use his roar to activate and deactivate stuff like platforms, but it's never very clear when you need to do that. Beast also has a slam move that he can use when he's falling, and can also climb up certain walls here and there. But overall, he just feels really chunky and not fun to play with at all. And of course, since he doesn't feel very fun to play with, you're gonna be doing a lot of platforming. Beast leaps well enough, but this is another one of those games where inertia is a big deal, since he'll barely jump forward if you're just stationary. But then he does like an Olympic leap as soon as you move more than a few inches. This makes standing jumps almost impossible, so you end up doing these running jumps constantly, and then usually ramming headfirst into an enemy that was waiting for you to do just that. And I hope you enjoy Beast getting attached to the edge of everything and doing like this little dance, because that's what's gonna happen every single time you get close to the edge of anything. But that's pretty much all there is to this one. It does at least look good, but playing it is just, it's not fun. The developers were obviously trying to make this appeal to the young boy crowd with a very aggressive Beast stomping around in some neat looking levels that look straight out of Castlevania. But the game is just too annoying to play, making it worth little more than what I hope was just a rental if any of you happen to play this beast of a game back in the day. Alright, look, I know that this is the game that everyone either loves or hates, mostly hates. But can we take just a minute to appreciate how good the Lion King movie was? The role that Disney was on back then was just insane. The Little Mermaid got people coming back to theaters just to watch Disney movies, and then Beauty and the Beast blew everyone away. Of course, Aladdin kept things rolling with one of the most memorable Robin Williams performances ever.
Watch out, they spit.
And then the Lion King showed up just to bring the house down. Not only for just being a great Disney movie, but one of the best movies ever made. It was pretty much peak Disney for most kids back then.
This'll all be mine?
And it probably didn't hurt that it was plastered all over everything. Toys, Burger King meals, and of course, a little game for the Super Nintendo and Genesis that made a lot of kids very angry.
Burger King, get your burger's worth.
But you know what? Whether you love this thing or you hate it, you can't deny that it doesn't look like The Lion King. And I think the graphics are something that instantly drew kids into this one. The first stage by itself is bright and shaded really well, and Simba looks and animates like he's straight out of the movie. And that probably has a lot to do with a lot of it coming straight from Disney themselves, and you can tell.
If you ever come back, we'll kill ya!
But as far as gameplay goes, it's pretty simple. All you can really do to attack in the first half of the game is to just jump on top of stuff. You can even kind of bounce off of enemies to chain it together if you can just get past how awkward it feels. You can also do this little roll attack across the ground to get past certain enemies, but there's not too many times where it's actually useful. Some enemies actually need to be flipped first by using your roar to stun them, which isn't a bad idea since that was kind of a running joke in the movie. And overall, I mean, it's fun to run around with Simba, roaring at bugs and jumping off stuff to the point where it's easy to overlook some of the more annoying stuff. Like a very iffy jump that doesn't feel very good, and the fact that Simba seems to take damage if air hits him too hard sometimes. But honestly, if the game can just keep this up, then we got a pretty good Lion King game here. And then immediately after that very first stage, the game completely tanks whatever goodwill it had, putting you in an absolutely awful level that focuses completely on the game's terrible platforming and tedious puzzles where you have to flip monkeys around to have them toss you back and forth in the correct order. But in between the monkey sections, you're stuck on the back of an ostrich and either jumping or ducking over whatever obstacles are coming at you. And even better, you die in one hit if you do this wrong, and it's really easy to screw it up. Basically, this whole level is just a ton of trial and error, mixed in with some frustrating platforms that Simba misses half the time whenever you try to jump on him. Now, I know that this stage is infamous for YouTube people losing their minds over it, and it is a bad level, but does it deserve its legacy as one of the worst levels ever? I mean, kinda, I guess. I think its biggest issue is just how it completely stalls the game out one level in, and probably a good chunk of kids never got past this to see that the rest of the game actually gets worse. After that level, the game does at least return to some form of sanity and leaves the monkeys and ostriches behind. But instead of puzzles and one-hit deaths, the game unleashes some awful level design on you and some really bad platforming, and it doesn't get much better from there on out. Because then it's time to get trampled by wildebeest while trying to jump over rocks that are almost impossible to time right. The Stampede stage does look really cool, but Simba runs around way too fast, making it super easy to just slide into stuff. And if the second level didn't make you quit playing, then this is the one that probably did it for you. But then halfway through the game, you're suddenly switched to being adult Simba. And if you thought the smaller Simba felt bad doing stuff, well, wait until you get to play around with this awkward boy. You at least do get a swipe attack when you're older, but it has a very short reach and doesn't work that great when everything is just kind of leaping at you constantly. This is about the point where I usually put the game down, because I just don't like playing as adult Simba. I do remember getting to the last boss as a kid, which is Scar if you didn't know, and just giving up because it was one of the most maddening boss fights I'd ever come across. And when you take all this together, that's probably why The Lion King is one of the more divisive games out there. There's a good chunk of people that love this thing to death, and just as many that can't stand it. And it speaks to how many kids actually played this, since it seems like everyone has an opinion on it. I see this game everywhere at used game stores and conventions, and there's usually always people that get excited when they see it. They're like, oh man, I remember playing that game, but then they usually follow that up with, yeah, but I never made it that far. There's some good stuff in here, and the game does look fantastic, but it really takes some effort to get past that bad level design and the insane difficulty. So no, as much as I do love the movie, I just can't give this game a pass. Wait, what the? Bonkers? Was this even a Disney cartoon? I mean, is it? Hold on here. Let's see here. Wait, it actually is. I don't have any memory of this show at all, and the cartoon apparently aired from '93 through '95, so this was like prime Disney afternoon time for me. I don't get how I totally missed this.
Not really.
Do you guys remember Bonkers, or is it just me being crazy that this never existed? Is Bonkers a new Mandela effect or something?
Never heard of him.
But whether it existed or not in cartoon form, I can at least say that this game exists. And not only does it exist, but it's actually a Capcom-developed Disney game. And that right there means that there could be something to this one.
Perfectly understandable.
Again, I have no clue who this Bobcat is, but just going by the instructions, he was a massive cartoon star and decided to quit the business to become a cop and fight crime. And that's what you're doing in the game. You essentially take control of Bonkers as he dashes through each stage trying to apprehend whatever criminal is at the end of them. And this is kind of a weird one because I don't really understand how the game wants me to play it. You are totally able to just run around and play this like any other platformer. But the big gimmick in the game is Bonkers Dash, where you can take off and theoretically run through the area. Except there's not too many sections where it seems like this is very useful. And maybe I'm just not doing this right or something, but it just seems like there's always something stopping your progress almost as soon as you start dashing. It seems like the areas where you can actually let loose and do it are mostly staged for that. I don't know, it's kind of weird. Otherwise, this is just your basic Disney platformer. The stages have some neat themed areas, and the bosses are always fun to see what they're gonna throw at you. The only things I really don't like is the hit detection on Bonkers whenever you try to jump on top of stuff, since it seems very picky about how you come down on them. This is also one of those games that seems to be in love with its over-exaggerated cartoony animations, where Bonkers is constantly being held up by stuff like getting fried by electricity or even just basic hits. He'll like stumble backwards for a second and then shake his head before you can even control him again, and I can't stand when games do that. It is some good quality Capcom animation though, and I'd like to know where this team was when Aladdin was slumming it up on the Super Nintendo with some pretty half-assed animations for most of the game, because Bonkers over here, of all things, looks pretty damn good. But I mean, that's really about the worst I can say about this thing. It definitely seems more aimed at the younger crowd, and that's fine I guess, it's nothing special. A super simple and easy platformer based on a character that even Disney doesn't seem to care about anymore. And even though I'm one of those people that'll sit around and play any Capcom game until my fingers bleed, Bonkers seems like a lesser effort. I think even Capcom knew that Bonkers wasn't long for this world and then just kind of phoned in a mostly mediocre game. And the fact that this thing came out in late '94 meant that it was already swimming way upstream to get any sort of attention as it was. Still though, I mean, it's inoffensive, and maybe it's because I just came off a video filled with mediocre mascot platformers, but Bonkers is decent fun in comparison. So even though there's nothing to go bonkers over about this game, there's way worse cartoon bobcats on the Super Nintendo. So check it out if you got a few minutes and you like this kind of stuff. Or if you're like me and you just needed confirmation that this cartoon even existed in the first place. And finally, we've got Mickey Mania, which just so happens to be yet another Traveler's Tales game, this one actually being their first proper Disney game that they developed right before Toy Story, so I wasn't too far off with that one. Only this game is coming in under that dreaded Sony ImageSoft label, but we already know from Toy Story that Traveler's Tales can make a totally decent game, so maybe Mickey Mania here can deliver something that's worth playing, unlike so many other Sony ImageSoft published games. Mickey Mania's big gimmick is that it's supposed to span the entirety of Mickey's career, going all the way back to Steamboat Willie and then progressing through the years, all the way up to the more recent, at least at the time, Prince and the Pauper version of Mickey. And before we even get into the gameplay, I just want to point out how big of a challenge it would have been for Traveler's Tales to make the art for just one of these eras, let alone several. The characters and enemies in this game look as good as they could possibly look on 16-bit consoles, and the animation it's really, really good. They even added in little touches, like how in the Steamboat Willie stage it slowly gains more color as you play through it. So regardless of gameplay, Traveler's Tales really put in the effort to make this a special looking game, and it really shows. Once you actually start playing it though, the shine of those graphics kinda starts wearing off, since Mickey here isn't doing much gameplay-wise. And really, I don't think he needed to, because if the game had just been some fun platforming and solid gameplay with a bunch of neat Mickey levels, I think this could have made for a really fun game. But the problem is that Mickey doesn't feel too great as a character. He can run and jump around okay, but his sprite is really big and the enemies are even larger in this game. And just like in Toy Story, the hitboxes surrounding you and those enemies makes things frustrating to say the least. Mickey takes hits from just about every single angle, and it doesn't help that the game is constantly throwing out tiny little obstacles that are almost impossible to dodge. Even the larger stuff seems like it's hard to avoid. You can hop on enemies' heads to take them out, but everything's so big that it's kind of hard to judge where you can even hit them and not get hit yourself. Mickey does at least get some marbles that he can throw around, and that's a much better option for hitting stuff that's out in front of you. But what is it with all these Disney games and bad hit detection? It's like every game that we've covered today has the same problem. But as mentioned, the star of the show isn't really the gameplay. It's the various stages that take you through Mickey's personal timeline, with each new stage starting up with some really nice animation commemorating the look of Mickey from that era. You of course get levels like Steamboat Willie, where you're jumping through scenes from Mickey's very first appearance, and even some of the more lesser known stuff like Moose Hunters, where you're hunting with Pluto while dodging a rampaging moose. You even get a not very fun 3D stage where you're running from said deranged moose. But really, I think what it comes down to is if you're a fan of classic Disney animation, then just playing through these stages and seeing all of their neat gags and set pieces is probably worth the frustration of the gameplay. Another thing that you might want to keep in mind though is that you might not want to play the Super Nintendo version, since it kinda got the short end of the stick. This version is actually missing an entire level and a really impressive staircase sequence that the Genesis and other versions of the game have. The Super Nintendo version even gets stuck with loading times in between stages, and this isn't a quick loading screen. I know the game has a lot of animation, but the Genesis version doesn't need to load. It must be all that blast processing, I guess. But even as a fan of early Mickey stuff, this is one that I could either take or leave. It's a neat idea, and the art and animation is really good, but I don't think there's enough consistency in the levels and the not-so-great gameplay to make it feel cohesive. It's actually a lot like Toy Story, where some levels are decently fun, but then others just kind of fall flat. But unlike Toy Story, Mickey Mania isn't mixing it up as much to keep the bad ones interesting. This is a platformer from beginning to end, and it's not a great one even at its best. But there is something to this game that I really enjoy, and if you're a fan of classic Disney and Mickey, then you might have some fun playing around with this one. Just don't expect too much out of it besides a really nice looking Disney game. Oh, and another thing about those damn hitboxes. And I think that's going to do it for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed looking at some fan-favorite Disney games. But as you can see, it turns out that wasn't Mickey at all, and just a bunch of mutated rats that's come up from the basement again. Life is cute sometimes. Anyway, if you happen to enjoy this video, can you give it a like or even a sub for possibly more Disney games in the future? But that's going to do it for me this week, guys, because I got to take care of something. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Mm.